Just a reminder that this meeting is welcome to the May meeting of the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. This meeting is being recorded. It's an open public meeting. People are welcome to attend. Public comment is available at the beginning. And after that, only members of the commission can speak. And we will go around and do introductions. And as I was saying, I want to welcome our two newest C2E2 members and let them introduce themselves. So Henry, you're right across from me. I will let you start.
Hot seat. Good evening, everybody. I'm Henry Perillo. I was appointed on Friday. So I'm
hot
off
Tuesday.
Tuesday? I thought I got the email on Friday. Maybe I got the email on Friday. I was okay. Sorry about that. I was appointed on Tuesday and I got emails on Friday and added to all of the dual drive documents on Friday. I'm very excited to be here. I've been attending some of the more recent C2E2 meetings just to get up to speed and express my interest in the group and what we're doing here. Obviously, it's tough. It's a tough time to be a federal employee, so I'm excited to be able to act more in a local role and support my community in what I believe is a very important way.
Do you want to say a bit? So you have been working for Treasury.
Yeah.
Doing climate change.
Yes, thanks. So my background is in environmental science and most recently working at the Treasury Department and have been under the prior administration involved in quite a bit of climate work there. Obviously on January 20th, things changed and a lot of my work has since changed as well. So it's been good to find other ways to continue to contribute in a meaningful way. So
Great.
Thanks, Cindy.
Katie.
I'm Katie Thompson. I have lived in Arlington for 30 some odd years now. I started my career as an energy and environmental lawyer in private practice, and over time took that experience into the transportation space, both at the Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, and also at Amazon. I led their global transportation and sustainability team. I'm really thrilled to be able to I should also add, I was the first senior sustainability officer at the Department of Transportation, where we were working on our regulatory programs, but also our own operations and how to get greener, more resilient, more efficient in our work practices as well. I'm really delighted to be able to participate in this way. I think it's really meaningful, all the work that you do, and I look forward to being a positive contribution.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll just go around the table. Jenna, let's go to you next.
Jenna Peabody, member of the AIR team at Arlington County.
And Doug.
Doug Snow and Boss, Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Fioretti. I'm the Assistant County Manager for Climate Policy in our Climate Policy Office.
Thank you.
Joan McIntyre, Commissioner.
Cindy Lewin, Chair.
Helen Haas, student member.
Trevor, let's go to you.
Trevor Montano, Commissioner.
And Ryan.
I'm just here from the neighborhood college, just listening in for this meeting.
Great, welcome. John.
John Bloom, Sierra Club.
And former chair of C2E2, I have to add. Rich.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Rich Dooley, Director of Climate Policy in the Climate Policy Office. Thanks.
All right, is there any public comment?
Doug.
Well, Doug, I'm going to let you introduce yourself in just a second as our first speaker. But so if there is no public comment, then Doug Schmidtmeyer, I would love to turn it over to you. And just as by way of background, I think I said this in the email I sent around, Doug, I don't think you saw, but that C2E2 has a solid waste committee, and the solid waste committee was very involved in working with you and other staff in putting together the solid waste plan. And it's a key part, and going forward will be, I assume, a key part of the climate action plan. And you guys will all be part of, but anyway, you're ahead of the climate action plan because you've been implementing the solid waste plan. You're going to tell us how long and what you've done to implement it and how excited we should be, which we are. So, Doug, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Cindy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Kriedemeyer. I'm the environmental planner for the County Solid Waste Bureau. And as Cindy mentioned, I'm going to work on sharing my screen and some slides real quick as I continue talking. As Cindy mentioned, I have been with the county just about 3 years, and during that time, a large focus of my work has been working on developing the new solid waste management plan that kind of incorporates zero waste principles into it. And so that plan is a 20-year planning document where we worked with an advisory board made up of different community members as well as a member of C2E2. It was Carrie Thompson at the time. And so through that process, we developed basically two parts. It's the state mandatory part for complying with state requirements, as well as the voluntary initiatives to help the county meet their 90% diversion goal by 2038. And it's made up of 15 voluntary program initiatives and 4 policy areas, essentially. And so it has a large emphasis on the inverted triangle that you see with source reduction, reuse, and recycling making up a vast majority, and where 90% of the waste generated in the county needs to go. And then the remaining 10% falls into those bottom 3 categories with resource recovery, incineration, and landfilling. And so the county board adopted that plan in June of last year. In fiscal year 24 budgeting, the budget process got started before the plan was adopted. So while we put forth some initiatives for funding, it hadn't been adopted yet. And so therefore we got no funding from the board at that time. And so as we all know, fiscal year 25 has been a tight budget year. And so everything that we've been implementing since June of last year has really been kind of squeaking through our internal budget for the Solid Waste Bureau and finding ways to really start implementation of this plan. And so the short-term initiatives that we've been working on, and I'm going to go into more detail on all of these in the following slides, is waste reduction education campaigns, voluntary organics diversion from the multifamily sector. And then so I guess quickly, the short-term initiatives are from 2024 through 2029. Medium term is from 2029 through 2023. And then long-term initiatives are really initiatives that aren't attached to a specific time period, but could be implemented at any point through the planning period. So the long-term are kind of as resources allow, we will pick from those to be able to implement them and roll them out to the county. And so those long-term initiatives that we've been working on have been the reuse repair fairs, equipment sharing programs, and then the online zero dashboard, which the county board in their adoption resolution wanted us to roll out by the end of fiscal year 2025. And so I am happy to announce that that's been done, and I'll give a quick overview of what that looks like. So as far as the waste reduction campaigns, we have really been focused on avoiding food waste over the last 9 months, really. We began by rolling out posters and different messaging across art buses, bus shelters, red top cabs, videos and tabling events. And then I believe it was November of 2024, we launched a digital streaming campaign where we contracted out to push digital streaming ads across the county on avoiding food waste, and then also getting people to partake and opt into the on-street organics collection that I'll talk about in the next slides. I will say that through the resident survey that we put out after we did 3 months of the digital streaming campaigns. We found that it had very little impact across the community. Most people, when we speak to them, they have noticed and have seen the posters that's displayed here on the slide. So we put these posters up in every bus shelter across the county, as well as versions of this in the art buses and different messaging, other like internal efforts. And so this is what people have seen the most. We saw very little impact with the digital streaming that we decided to do. And that campaign was about 3 months long with the digital streaming from November through late January. And so it's probably something that if we do a version of in the future, we've learned a lot from, and we'll adjust and tweak. But for the most part, it'll probably be unlikely that we do it again because we saw so little impact from it.
Doug, do you have a hypothesis as to why the impact was so low?
So the way that they, I will say, so we saw initial spikes in viewership like within the first week of the campaign, and then it kind of declined slowly over the 3-month period. And so what we're thinking is, you know, a lot of it is through online streaming platforms. I believe like Roku, Fire Stick, Samsung, different smart TV apps that people stream a lot. And through most of them, I believe people can have the option of skipping through ads, you know, after you watch like the first few seconds. And so we did get some complete viewership of those. They lasted about 20 to 30 seconds, the ads that we did. But really, I think that people, when they're watching, just, you know, most people tune out for ads and skip as quickly as possible, regardless of what the content is. And so I think that's really kind of what it is that people just aren't interested in the ads that make it on, because most of them aren't specifically oriented towards them or the things that they're looking at or viewing. And so, you know, they just kind of skip over it. And so I think that's why it had as little impact as it did. The next program that we launched, and this was in July of last year, was the on-street food scraps collection pilot. We deployed 14 Big Belly containers, which are the smart bins that allow residents to download an app on their smartphone and access the container to be able to deposit food scraps in. This is a program that's more focused on the multifamily residents throughout the county. As everyone knows, all of the single family or duplex units within the county are serviced by the curbside program. And so they all have their green organics cart. And so the multifamily really has very few options when it comes to diverting food scraps. And so we deployed 14 containers throughout the county. With that, we're able to make it easily accessible to about just over 20% of multifamily units based on where they're currently deployed. And we tried to place them within about a 2.5-minute walk to make it as convenient as possible. We are in the process of awaiting delivery of 10 more containers that we should be deploying later this summer or early fall. It has received a lot of positive feedback, and I'll go over some of those performance measures in an upcoming slide. And like I said, it's a really easy program. A resident just needs to download the Big Belly Smart Compost app. There is no registration or personal information that needs to be provided in order to use it. Once they open the app, there's a map of all of the containers with a pin drop and the status of the container, indicating whether it's available, almost full, or unavailable, meaning that it's reached its collection capacity. And so they're able to go to the nearest container or just divert a little bit if the one that is closest to them is full. And then once you're within a few feet, about 10 feet, you just hit the unlock button in the app and it will unlock and you can deposit and close it up and go. So it really helps create a very clean collection stream when it comes to food scraps. One of the things we were worried about when deploying this is the amount of contamination that may end up in it. But I've heard stories from one of the solid waste committee members, Anne Germain, where she had actually witnessed someone walk up to one, try and jiggle the door to drop in their trash. And when she couldn't unlock it, she went to the trash can to throw away what she was trying to throw away. So it has been really effective. And we've seen very minimal contamination through this program with trash and other recyclable materials. So what we see is all organics for the most part. It makes it very intentional for residents to drop off food scraps in the on-street bins. And the program does accept all of the same items that the curbside program accepts. The only exception would be pizza boxes, since those can be too large to actually fit in the chute at the beginning or at the containers. And so that's the only thing that we advise residents not to throw away in them that is different from the curbside program. So we're trying to keep all of the food scraps programs kind of consistent through the county for residents.
Doug, you've mentioned the curbside program a couple of times. Do you have any data on how successful that program is or how well utilized it is?
So we do quarterly waste audits. And so based on that data, we're collecting about 20% of the eligible food scraps through the curbside cart. It's one of the programs that is fairly consistent in the quantity of food scraps that we're seeing actually get into the green cart. There's a lot of messaging that we need to do in order to get people to do food scraps through their green organics cart, but there's also a lot of obstacles that we need to overcome with that. We've done surveys throughout the years since that program launched in 2021. And there's a lot of hesitation with it, with the ick factor and the possibility of bugs and things like that that prevent people from participating. And so we just need to try and find ways of messaging and providing tips and tricks that help people overcome those obstacles. What we hope and what we try to do is that if someone's given it a chance once and they've kind of had a, poor run in with it at that point, that they try it again, but starting small, maybe not doing all of the, maybe wet food scraps that they have, starting small with banana peels or, something small that they can kind of build up to. And that's kind of how, as we go out and talk to residents, that's what we try and get them to do, is start small instead of trying to go all in and find what actually works for them, to divert as much as possible while also still, keeping it clean or some of those other factors at bay that they are concerned about.
Hold on, we got it. Another question.
Hi, Doug. I'm Doug Snowboss. I'm probably the most ignorant person in the room right now because I don't know, I'm sure you know very well, what's the advantage to society in segregating out food scraps from regular trash that gets put in a landfill? And what happens to scraps that...
No, that's a great question. And it's, so some of the benefits of diverting organics away from landfilling and incineration, really. So food scraps in a landfill actually generate methane, which is 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than typical carbon dioxide is. And so as those food materials sit and stagnate and kind of anaerobically digest, it's creating methane. And so that is what can actually create more greenhouse warming through methane. And so that's one. If it goes to landfill, in Arlington County, most of our trash gets incinerated. And so food scraps are much more high in water content than other trash items. And so it actually takes more energy to burn food scraps than it does by diverting them. And so we're actually able to use less energy while creating energy in order to dispose of it. And then some of the other benefits, when we reduce food waste or compost food waste, we have all of the upstream benefits that come with using less water to grow, less fertilizers, less inputs into that growing process. And then on the back end of it, as if we're composting, we're able to create really nutrient dense soil amendments, things like that, that actually create benefits rather than just burning it or throwing it into the landfill where it's not really becoming anything useful again at that point. It's just being disposed of. And so with it, we're trying to put food scraps to the highest and best use, which is composting and making them available back to the community through that. Does that answer your question, Doug?
Well, what happens to the stuff that you collect off the street? Do we sell it as manure or fertilizer or what?
We, so the curbside organics collection from residential goes to Prince William County, where there's a commercial composting facility. That I believe they do compost and then turn around and sell. The county does bring back a few truckloads every spring, where we make it free for pickup to residents. And then through the on-street program, all of that comes back to the Earth Products Recycling Yard in Shirlington, where we have 2 in-vessel composters, which essentially we compost and then we'll either turn it into topsoil or make that compost available to residents free for pickup. So we try and bring anything that we've sent out, we try and bring back a little bit of, or we make available to residents for pickup, as well as I believe the leaf and wood mulch parks and water sewer streets use on some of their projects. So it does try and go full circle within the county.
So we ship it to Prince William County. Does Prince William County pay us for it, or do we pay them to take it? Or is it all?
We pay them to take it. The tipping fee is, I believe it's right around $41 a ton right now, which is cheaper than actually sending the tipping fee to Covanta at the moment. However, in October of this year, that tipping fee at Covanta actually will drop to 0 based on a contract that the county manager had negotiated several years back. So we currently, like all of our curbside services, we are essentially paying someone to take and process the waste in the county. So trash, recycling, and organics are all paid for to drop off at those processing facilities.
We pay, Arlington County being Arlington County pays.
Yes.
Correct. And so the single family program is funded through the household solid waste rate. So every single family residence in the county through their utility billing is charged the household solid waste rate, which is the rate that we determine and calculate that is going to cover trash, recycling, and organics collection services. So it is resident funded. However, the county has negotiated those contracts for that disposal for that material.
So Doug, this is Cindy. I know that you have a lot to cover, and I know that we're asking a lot of questions, and there are more questions in the chat, which we'll hold for a little bit, but they're very interesting. So can you sort of fly, and then we will have more time for questions.
Yes. So this is the performance data for the on-street program. Since we've hit our stride in November, we're collecting about just over 10,000 pounds of food scraps every month. We have just over 2,100 users. And to date, through the end of April, we've collected over 89,000 pounds of food scraps. So it is a very used program for one that is so new. And then just last month, we were also awarded the Governor's Environmental Excellence Awards from DEQ and the state of Virginia. So it is also something that they recognize as
Yeah,
a
congratulations.
contribution to what we're working on.
That's great.
Yes. Let's see here. Oops. And then the equipment sharing program, and the next slide is the reuse and repair fairs. So the library, we discovered, already has programs like this. So the equipment sharing program, libraries are naturally a lending community facility. And so we have partnered with them to be able to provide resources for them to buy additional equipment, mainly home repair tools, some energy type things, as well as a handful of other things. So we're providing them, I think we purchased just about $5,000 worth of equipment and tools for them to be able to add to their circulation collection. But it is something that we continue to promote through all of our outgoing communications with the community to just make people aware that these programs exist.
So the idea here, Doug, is that you reduce trash by reducing purchasing by everybody sharing, which is great.
Exactly. Yep. The more that people reuse and share, the less that they go out and make that one-time purchase in order to take care of that one project. You know, a lot of people buy a tool, use it once, and then it sits in their shed or their toolbox and never gets used again. So if we can make things available that people are more likely to use and then return and then share with someone else, it kind of helps reframe that mindset of consumer driven behavior where they can borrow something instead of buying something.
Hey, Doug, have you considered asking people if they want to donate?
So the library does,
Why these don't use
they
it?
seek donations. We haven't, as a solid waste bureau, gone out and asked people if they want to donate things. It's very likely that if we did that, I could see us getting overwhelmed with donations, since like our office wouldn't have the capacity to be able to, sort and, evaluate all of the things that got donated. So we do encourage people to use, the secondhand retail such as Goodwill or Salvation Army or some of those other donation things, but we haven't tried to get donations for like a lending library where people can take things out and bring them back. The second, I'm sorry, did I hear a question?
Keep going.
Okay. The second one is the reuse and repair fairs. So this is something the library also already does through their makerspace. They hold, I believe it's every month, they hold a Fix Nearly Anything event where residents can bring in small electronics, clothing, things that they might be able to fix, and the library staff, as well as some volunteers, are on site to help them be able to do that. And so as part of that purchase I mentioned, there's things such as sewing machines and some of the small pieces that they need in order to repair items that we've provided to them, that they're able to use through this program. So we've supported them. We're going to let them kind of continue on with what they've been doing, as instead of kind of reinventing the wheel. They're already there. They've already been doing it for several years. And so we're just going to continue supporting them through those efforts. And then the next thing is the zero waste dashboard. This launched in late 2024. It is a storyboard format, very similar to what the Air team has done with the greenhouse gas inventory data. And so we have several different pages here that present data and describe it to residents. Since most are very unfamiliar with waste data and kind of what they're looking at when they do it, so we provide descriptions, but they're able to filter by year, month, different other categories. And so it just gives people a way of exploring waste data as well as seeing how the county is performing year over year. And if you're interested, you can find it by searching solid waste management dashboard on the county's website, and it will bring up the page with the link to the storyboard. But we have like the on-street collection program data, we have the waste audit data, we have our annual DEQ reporting for our recycling rate, HHM household hazardous materials drop-off data. So there's a slew of various data categories that people can take a look at and explore through that dashboard. The next thing that we're currently working on is a construction and demolition debris study. So this came up a lot through the plan development process. Virginia being a Dillon rule state, we have very little authority over C&D waste. However, SCS Engineers, they're the same firm that helped us develop the solid waste management plan. They're conducting this study and developing a report for us that'll look at Virginia-specific municipal best practices for encouraging CDD, reduction and diversion, as well as different recovery facilities in the state of Virginia, and then looking at other municipal recovery programs and kind of creating summaries of those for us that we'll be able to share. And they're currently working on it, and we're hoping that they'll be completed with it by the end of this fiscal year. So by the end of next month is what we anticipate. And so the C&D was not included as an initiative specific, but was asked for in the adoption resolution that this study take place. And so we're working on that now. And so right now, again, all of the initiatives in the solid waste management plan are, contingent upon financial resources and constraints. And so we have been working within our existing budget to roll out everything that I've talked about now. And I believe we need to confirm, but I believe in this budget year, we're going to be getting a one-time funding of $130,000 for education and outreach. So we'll be developing additional materials and things like that in the upcoming year to work on education, outreach, waste reduction, things like that with that money. And with that, we can open it up for questions and discussion.
Steph, I have a lot of questions, but I see questions in the room, but also you've answered one of the questions in the chat about construction and demolition waste diversion, which we're very interested in with our work on SNRCs. But are you guys, I know, and we've had presentations by students about food waste within APS, and can you remind us how is APS totally separate, or are you working with them on food waste in schools?
So APS currently falls under the county code chapter 10 for basically the same as multifamily commercial regulations go. However, we are working with them. We submitted a grant application to the EPA last year, where we would work with APS as well as some of our own internal projects, such as farmer markets, to help expand organics diversion and food scraps diversion throughout APS as well as at farmers markets. I know the EPA, the last I heard, they're still planning on awarding those grants. So hopefully that will continue, but we'll see. We'll have to determine what the future holds on that. I do know that there are
Is that
I'm sorry?
Is that just food waste or is that a broader category of APS? I mean, they must have trash.
So with APS, it's solely focused on diverting food scraps from the cafeterias.
Yeah.
So there are other things that they could do, and I know we're working on building that relationship so we're able to support them in some ways, but they have their own contracts, own purchasing, things like that. So we'll support them as they need us, but we do keep track of all the data. So, as the years unfold, there will be room for improvement, and hopefully we'll all be on board with that. So,
Great,
there
thank-
are also, I know, I can't remember the exact group now, but they have grant funding to do sharing tables through some of APS's schools. I know they were conducting a waste audit this morning to kind of look at what food scraps and food waste is being thrown away by students to get an idea. And so I'm hoping to get that data from them and kind of talk to them more about that. But they are working a lot to incorporate sharing tables and gleaning from different schools where that food that is still packaged or still useful can be taken to families or to places like AFAC where it can be redistributed. So the APS is working on things outside of what the grant opportunity that we're working on them with. But
That's good.
those conversations will just continue with us, and I'll have to continue getting a better insight on that with them as they share with us, hopefully.
Rob, did you have a question?
Yes. Yes, thank you. I know because my wife just made a run from Williamsburg Middle School down to AFAC, taking some extra perishables down there. So I know that's happening. So and thanks for a great presentation. I want to go back to one of your earlier slides where you had the posters there. You cut off the social media campaign because you had, I guess, kind of web analytics that said it wasn't working too well. Do you know if the posters are working well? Do you have some kind of a survey or evaluation to, kind of before and after for the posters? Are they actually changing behaviors? And how are you going to spend that $130,000 now? Are you going to do more of the posters or try to amplify certain aspects of it?
So when we did the resident survey, it was looking at all of the materials that we put out there. So the posters as well as the streaming. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was a very high percentage of residents actually said that they saw the posters more than the streaming. And so if we do go with more posters, it may be different messaging, but we're still in the early stages of developing what any type of education and outreach the $130,000 will be spent on. So that's kind of hard to say at this point, but it will be based around what we've learned through everything that we've done so far.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Well, Doug, thank you very much. Really appreciate your being here and going through this information. We look forward to seeing you again.
Yes.
I know there's a lot happening. I know, as you were talking about, Beth, I know that solid waste is an important piece of the puzzle. So we appreciate all your work. We do.
You're
I
welcome.
know more questions in the chat, but I think we have to move on, given time constraints. So with that, thank you, Doug. And Jenna, I will turn it over to you. I think you're next. Jenna.
Okay, great. Thanks, Doug. Okay, so I wanted to walk through a little bit about what I've been up to at the county for outreach and communications and behavioral change. So I'm just going to give an overview. I think our Accelerate report, which we just released, and then our newsletter, which I think will just show an example of some things that we do for outreach, and you'll be able to follow along, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll subscribe yourselves.
Right, and just as a reminder, we've been talking a lot about public outreach and communications, that important. And so that's part of why Jen is speaking. And another part is we're trying to find out everything that's happening here, which is the centerpiece of a lot of the energy work for the county staff and that general care team.
Yes. Yes, so continuing the air feature here. So I'm just zooming in on our page now. I don't know how many of you have actually visited it, but we have our carbon roadmap strategies just, you know, at the forefront, and then goes into our CEP, our carbon roadmap, accelerate, which is what we'll get into, and then our latest. Oh, good, thank you. And then
Hey, Jen, could
yep.
you share with the?
Yep, doing that now. Sorry about that. And then, thank you. And then, so the accelerate report, and then you can just click on any of the tiles and it'll go into some of those programs and initiatives. And then down here, you would also be able to find our newsletter. So, and the report would be accelerate. So first, I just wanted to show you the accelerate report. So this is something that we've been working on for the past couple of months. I think, you know, beginning in November. Going through the holidays, and then just released around Earth Day. And this is one of you know, our great standing pieces that we're able to just share with the community about all the recent energy successes that have happened throughout the year from most of the departments in OSUM. So, and then also outside of OSUM, we have, you know, FMB, also through our transportation group, and so these will all be captured in this report. Our main stories this year was releasing our carbon roadmap strategies, which was in the October timeframe. In the communities, this is just a whole section on some of the outreach tabling events that we've done, and then federal grants awarded. We're still holding on to one of them. Recently lost one, but we're going to close that out. Yes, our G2G grant was sadly canceled. So, but more to come on that. And we're going to take a different approach of how we're going to work in the community about our decarbonization tool. So back to the accelerate report. I definitely would encourage you to look through this. It's about, I think it says 30 pages, but it's about, you know, 60 pages. And it's just, you know, summaries of all of the energy successes. So really it could go from sustainability, adaptation, resilience.
Can you go back to table of contents?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Probably easier. So, so, you know, we tried to cover it through the CEP topics. So from resilience, renewable energy, government activities, education, behavioral change, buildings, resilience, and then so each of these, you know, we tried to capture a couple of stories, and just this is all just from 2024. So should be, you know, it's the latest, it's the most up to date. It's basically our sustainability report as much as we can get. There's facts, figures, graphs, data. Exciting news stories that we've released, and it's also interactive, so you can click on the links and, you know, learn more information, go to the websites. You know, Doug, for example, sent along solid waste stories, which were then, you know, copy edited into making sure that they go to their website, and you can see that dashboard that he was talking about by clicking through here. So it's, you know, it's an excellent report, something we can be proud of, and something you can also share with others if they're looking about what Arlington and, you know, the air team is doing.
It sounds like you got good participation from other parts of, or other departments within the county. So they all contributed stories. You did a call to all of them.
Yes, yeah, this was definitely an interdepartmental effort. Yeah, we worked sort of probably gathered stories through the new year, and then by that point it was copy editing, copywriting, and gathering more graphics and things like that. Make it more, you know, user friendly and just more of a magazine feel. I don't know if you've read a sustainability report before, but they're kind of boring and long, and usually just words. So we tried to, add in the photos so we can see, oh,
Yeah.
these are the solar, panels on the roofs. And, just, we use a couple stock photos, but, this is us in the community. It's actually the people, doing the work. So you kind of, you get a sense of, these are real people doing real work and, you just got it. So yeah, so this has been out for about a month now. And now so then I can just go right into the newsletter. Which you all can subscribe to by going to here. There's also the archive of all of our editions. We launched it in October of 2020. So it's been going on for, almost 2 years. And this was just our recent newsletter. In it, just a quick snippet about AIR, what we're trying to do with this outreach. Here's the Accelerate report. You can view it here. As we saw from Drew's presentation last month, the GHG inventory, you can view the inventory, view the dashboards. And then we also try to do upcoming events. So anything that we will be speaking at or tabling or involved with in any way, then this is just, an example. So recently, one of our outreach activities was tabling with the CPO team. We went over to DC and Henry was there and visited us at our table. He's crossing the borders to just, make sure Arlington, DC. But yeah, so we answered some questions about electrifying homes and just, any questions that they really had about Arlington because it was a sort of a DMV focus. But, we had a few Arlingtonians over and we answered some of their questions. And then, just telling them also about other events that are happening in the area. So in Arlington, as you know, there was Bike to Work Day last week, which, has thousands of Arlingtonians who bike to work and across the DMV area. So just things that, will get people to maybe make a behavioral change as well. So just little energy tips like that. And then we have our Get Green app. So, partnering with CPO, making sure that we're sharing resources across the county and then, just working together and showcasing that.
Do you find that the tabling is effective? Is it a deeper, because it's one sort of very retail, you can only talk to one person at a time, but is it that much deeper? Do you find that it pays off?
I think it's effective for people who maybe don't email. I think it's for the people who do attend events and, they're maybe they're not going through the technology way to, reach out. So it's been very helpful, especially at our county fair, which is, days of people coming up to our table. We're answering questions. Maybe they have questions about things that happened 10 years ago, but we're still trying to, bring them up to speed on what we're doing. I also find that it's helpful to just show them in person our materials. So we can say, we can walk them through it versus setting up a call over, over the course of a couple of weeks. And then, maybe we get in touch with them, but maybe not, or maybe the emails get dropped on their end and they don't really respond. We don't know if we answered their questions. So I would say that, it's definitely been very helpful
Is it
to that.
Source of, do you find it helps? Do you find that you're learning about sources of confusion or sources of?
Yeah, so I would say one of the major projects that we're working on now is our multifamily EV charging initiative. And so how can we do that? And this was something that was brought up 2 years ago, I think, at a tabling event. We had so many renters coming with questions. And so we eventually put out a survey and received the feedback, which was then put into our newsletter. And we found out, what were their issues? Why weren't they able to get EV chargers in their buildings or condos, associations? So these are things that, gathering data over the course of how many months, and then now we're, formulating a plan, seeing what permitting allows, but working on answering their questions and building out a resource page, which will eventually launch.
Doug and then Henry.
Just real quick, and I don't know anything at all about comms or outreach or any of this, but just ask questions. Is there any way to find out or see how many times people have clicked on the Accelerate report?
Yes,
Do you have that information?
I don't have that number right now. I can come with that information though.
And related to that, do you know how many people are on the email list for the AIR newsletter?
Yes, yeah, about 7,000 plus. Yeah. So it started at 1,000, so we've had full, and these have been all through subscription, so it's raised to about 7,000 plus.
Thank you.
Henry.
Doug asked one of my questions, so that's efficient. As far as the Accelerate report goes, it sounded like the solid waste team was putting together like a story map. Have you guys thought about something similar for the Accelerate report where it's interactive the way that it is now? Maybe it's more like you could scroll through it and see the different sections as you go through like a web page or something. It's good the way that it is, but I was curious if there were like other thoughts to make it more interactive.
So we were thinking of doing a piece that I think that we were just running out of time, but we were thinking of doing a piece where it would show the sectors of greenhouse gas emissions. And so then you would be able to see on the page, oh, okay, so if buildings is the most emissions, then they could click on that and then read those stories and what we're doing to address it. And then similarly, transportation, et cetera. So yes, definitely thought of it. I think that we just, time wise, just didn't get to it by the deadline that we wanted to release it by our day.
Of course. And then one last thought was regarding like ways of getting people, maybe more people who may not always go on websites or check the county webpage. Have you guys thought about like putting QR codes around like at public places, like at bus stops, libraries, kind of things where people can just scan and then get a link and then just put their email in for the newsletter or put their, figure out, oh, I want to see the report or I want to do something else, engage with the county, some climate related.
Yes, I swear I didn't plant him. We
did meet up at the fair the other
I know. No, so we are doing that at the libraries. We are putting QR codes out so that way they're able to just scan them and download the report. And then similarly at our tabling events, those are a part of our tabling materials. QR codes for people to download the report since we're not going to hand out 60 sheets of paper. So
That'd be anti-brand.
Yeah.
Not on brand, but yes, I fear that people who don't email are also not great with QR codes.
True.
But still good.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Are you looking at ways of maybe getting some, since this is an annual type publication, is kind of using the dashboard-like approach that would kind of say how much has happened over the past few years. And then also as you're doing the different articles, having something that's highlighting, what the impact is, how much of reduced carbon emissions or waste or what on those types of things that people can not just read what you're doing, but get a clear idea of what the impact is.
I think that's definitely something that we could do more of. I think that we address it a little bit in one of the stories where we say impact is reduction percent-wise. And I can really scan to that page.
Now, but that's
so it's
so
something
that
like
trend.
this where we see the reduction and you can see each of the sectors. But I think that something more interactive would be helpful for people to just either through the website or maybe it's a graphic that we can hand out. But
as you do
I
it for
agree.
more years, you'll have
More data.
Kevin.
Two questions on two separate things you referred to. One, we were talking about the project with multifamily housing EV charging. Was that just diagnosis of the problem, which we know, or was there a solution?
Yeah, we have a solution being built out for resources. So we're addressing it that way as of now, but for doing direct work on something that would obviously involve more departments beyond.
Sure.
But resources wise, yes.
I mean, I think that's something to follow up on in the future about what, how the county's going to follow up on that analysis, because it is a significant problem that is going that's very much standing in the way, particularly in an environment like Arlington, where so much of the population is in multifamily housing, to figure out how to get people driving without carbon emissions. So
Right.
And then the other thing, completely unrelated, you're beginning your remarks, you kind of referred offhand to the grant that was canceled.
Slide that in.
Off alarm bells with me.
Yes.
But can you give us more details about that and what is the county doing about the cancellation?
So the G2G, which is their government to government grant, was just canceled and we received notice of it recently. So we are just in the process of notifying, well, we notified our partners, but we're now in the process of meeting with our partners and, finishing up the admin work on their end. So making sure they submit their papers over to us because it was canceled. I think notification was May 1. So they were able to operate through the end of April, which is great. But so we are still in the process of talking through how we're going to address it.
Government to government,
Is
so what?
this the program?
The EHE, sorry, the Energy Health Equity grant. Yep.
And how much, had we received any money from it, or how much are we losing?
So this was about 600 something thousand.
And we spent some of it, or that's the part.
We were going, yes, so we were able to draw down funds, but now it's a little confusing if we're getting.
Yes,
Is the cancellation being contested in court? Is it a lawful cancellation or is it sort of a spurious cancellation? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, as of 30 minutes ago, it's still canceled,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Just getting back to, with, about the, multifamily EV charge, are you looking at Alexander's?
Yes,
Something good? Model?
and
That would be cool.
I know you'll be touching on that with the updates as well.
Yeah, right, that's right. And speaking of updates and all the way things that are backloaded in this agenda, thank you very much, Jenna. That was really interesting.
Yep.
And I think our next speaker is Jennifer.
So, thank you. So I love the acceleration work, and it is very hard to communicate dense information in a way that people can understand, and B, that's like semi-entertaining. And so I was saying to Jenna, this I mean, yes, it's been around for a while, but this has a lot of legs and opportunities for us to continue to promote, including sharing with Alexandria City. So
there.
So no, I'm going to give a little bit of background just for our two new commissioners. So Climate Policy Office was, we were sort of reimagined, if you will, back in August. And since then have been working hard to identify and now implement a 2-year work plan that we presented to the board in the winter. And our primary focus is really helping to coordinate and amplify the work of the county. So Jenna was mentioning that the Get Green Arlington mobile application, that was something that the Climate Policy Office implemented. But really all that is a big amplifier of information that is being created by air, by stormwater, by solid waste, transportation, and it's taking that information and sharing it with the public. So so that's really our primary focus is on helping the county implement its climate commitment through whole of government, whole of community approach. And of course I can go into a lot of detail, but that's sort of the rest of it all. So it's in that spirit that we created a work plan of which we are implementing many of the items. I'll happy to answer questions about things that we've already completed, but what's currently underway. So from an administrative perspective, we were given, we have a total of 4 FTEs, myself, Rich Dooley, which is on the call, and we are actively recruiting for a comms 2 position, which we believe will help, again, fulfill that amplified mission for the county. So We are in phase one. We actually had our position open for 1 week and received 265 applications. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, no, I'm really excited, really qualified candidates. What we're looking for is essentially a generalist, because we need a little bit of everything in order to do the work for, to help support the county efforts. And we have some big plans for them coming very soon. So, so that's item number one. Number two is the Eco Action Arlington, which is a longstanding partner of the counties. We teamed up with them to design and implement the Get Green Arlington mobile application. That is now, it kicked off in the end of January. So our target was to have about 500 subscribers. We have 400, so not quite what we were hoping for, but we knew it would be difficult. Behavior change is hard. Downloading an app is even harder. And that the Get Green Arlington is designed, right, to inspire climate action. So our focus, particularly during Earth Month, was doing a fair amount of promotions, tabling events. We had earned media, so Channel 7, DC News Now, WTOP. We had paid media, Peach Jar, which is what goes out to schools. That's a flyer. And we had an ad running through Arl Now for the month. We also did the Red Cab digital ads as well, posters in community centers and the like. So our sort of focus now is on working to find new ways to connect with folks. And then I know Joan had brought up, how are we sort of communicating impact? Well, Get Green Arlington, every task you take, there's a certain amount of leaves or actions that you take. There's a certain amount of leave that you receive as a result. And each leave is the equivalent of 10 pounds of carbon dioxide avoided. So we've had over 10,000 actions, and we're really proud that that we have a small but mighty mobile app, and are hoping to expand it going forward. I have very specific performance metrics that I have in mind. If we can't get it off the ground in another year, we will consider abandoning it. But I have no problem letting go of something that's not working and looking to be creative in another location. The other thing that we're doing is working with the Eco Action Arlington and our partners at AIR to rethink the Energy Masters program. So as for some of you who are tracking with the budget, the Energy Masters law, Eco Action received a grant as part of this community housing grant for several years to support the program. That has since, they did not receive that award this year. The county stepped in, gave them the climate, through the Climate Action Fund, funded the program at least $25,000 to support that work, with the expectation that we would sort of rethink Energy Masters. And we are actively engaged with Eco Action, AIR, and the City of Alexandria, who's also a partner in all of this, to re-envision it as climate ambassadors. And so we're really excited about it. This is all about sort of the whole of community. How do we amplify? How do we use the resources that we have, which is one of our best resources is our volunteers who want to get out there and communicate on various topics. We want to engage them and do more with that. So so that's happening as well. And then moving on to the Climate Action Plan, which I know we referenced it a little earlier. The Climate Policy Office is charged with updating the Community Energy Plan into a Climate Action Plan, which is broader in scope. And we still plan on kicking that off this year. We are actively engaged in scoping with our potential vendor using our Energy Masters agreement, which means we can go faster rather than going through our procurement process. So that's our goal, and we will hopefully press on and be able to talk more about that at a, if the chair would like, at a future meeting. Another really fun and interesting topic is corporate climate leaders. And that's we are in the process of working with a potential corporate nonprofit, a corporate focused nonprofit dedicated to supporting climate policy development in the corporate space. So we're working with them. Hopefully, we can solidify a deal where they're going to provide the content needed for us to run a corporate climate leaders program here in Arlington, hopefully for free. And so just quickly backing up, and again, of course, if the chair would like us to come back, we'd be happy to talk more about it. But our goal with the corporate climate leaders is to help corporations, small and large, in Arlington through their climate journey, wherever they may be. It could be in Amazon, although I don't think they really need us, but it could be in Amazon. It could be a Deloitte or the vendor down the street. And what we realize and what we've heard over and over again is that we'd like to have the resources. We need more resources. In addition, we plan to recognize the good work of our climate leaders as part of this process. Everybody loves a little bit of free promotion, so that will be part of it. But really, it's about providing the content needed to develop your programs. And I will also say selfishly, we have the Green Building Incentive Program that is focused on our property managers, our developers, right, to incentivize them to electrify their buildings, improve their buildings envelope. If we have corporate climate leaders, the people who are conceivably leasing the building space, and we can help push their programs along, we're creating a demand for electrification. So you have the people inhabiting the buildings and the people who own the buildings now have they're coming at it slightly in two different places. But the idea is to put those two together and hopefully continue to push forward in our building space, which makes up 56% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So we are excited about that, and we're close to hopefully bringing an agreement to the board in the coming months. So we're soon on that. Also in April, we teamed up with the City of Alexandria and AIR to host a HVAC listening session. So we invited HVAC contractors to come and to share with us what are the barriers to helping residential homeowners electrify. And yes, there's a lot of data out there regionally, nationally, on what those barriers are, but we wanted to hear it from the people who are here locally. And not only that, because it creates an opportunity for us to establish a relationship. So there's other benefits to having that conversation. And what we learned was 3 things from them. And then we talked about like, what are our opportunities to support you, all of that good stuff. And they said, one, from an opportunity perspective, they need the government to help push out more information about heat pumps. We need to message and continue to message the value of electrifying homes. They were, obviously they were talking heat pumps, but I think in general, it's safe to say, just weatherization, right? Electrification are key sort of messages that we need to continue to push out. 2, as part of that message, to create a checklist. Now, this is them telling us, right? Now, we have to do our research, all the things, but a checklist to help homeowners understand if you want to put solar on your roof, there are other things that you need to do or be thinking about before you put solar on your roof. Otherwise, you're going to get sticker shock. That's, potentially, like replace your roof at the same time. Or maybe when you're thinking about replacing your roof, maybe that's the time to be thinking about something else, like putting solar on. So, we were just talking sort of big picture. So checklist for them on the heat pump side, it's about weatherizing first, which means that you can have a smaller system, less costly, et cetera, and you can save energy. And then finally, they really thought that there was an opportunity for further education for future employees, right? So the workforce, there is a skilled workforce, but there's always there's a need for continually like having fresh staff come in, particularly as demand increases. With any luck, the IRA rebates we're being told that we were being told by the state that they should come through in the summer, TBD on that. But if those do arrive, then there will be, we would hope, a greater demand for home electrification. And as a consequence, we want to make sure that we have the skilled workforce to do it. So those were the three main pieces of feedback. And we, AIR, when I say we, CPO, AIR, and Alexandria are reconvening to talk about how we are going to potentially work together to address one or more of those items. And we recognize this is a regional issue. We've also been talking to Fairfax, Prince William County, and we will reach out to some of the other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia to see if they too want to participate, because rising tide floats all boats. And if we're able to work together and push out messaging, of course, it would be unique to each jurisdiction. But if there's some economies of scale doing the work, then we want to take advantage of that. So those are the sort of main elements that we're working on. But there's a lot more sort of in the works. But those are sort of our big buckets for now.
That's great. And as far as the chair wanting you to, I see questions all over the place. As far as the chair wanting you to come back, of course, you have a standing invitation to speak, and also we hope we'll hear regular updates from you. I know that monthly we talked about was probably too much, but all right, I'm going to go around the table. So it's Louis, Doug, Henry, and Helen. Okay. Hey, Joe. And Joe has been rescued from River House next door.
You did a great job not answering the questions.
I'm shocked to hear that. Or they're like,
It's smaller this time.
okay, good. All right, well, we're January's paper update. Questions starting with Lily about all the things that are happening at CPO.
Can I go with my question?
Sure.
Hi, Jennifer. Nice meeting
Nice
you,
to meet you.
Liliana. I have a question about the climate resolution. I mean, that was a huge win, and it lays out the path for a very ambitious goal. But you need to create all the infrastructure to actually make sure that that resolution is known and applied by everybody. I am helping with the SPRC process for one project. I was very surprised to learn that the people who work in that process from the county have very definitive guidance on what they should be looking at, and the resolution doesn't seem to be part of it. Yeah, so if that is not a priority for you right now, it should be, because if buildings are the responsible for the greatest portion of emissions, and if that process that is approving buildings that are going to last 40, 50 years and are going to lock us in on emissions, and we have that goal of carbon neutrality at 2050, there is a disconnect, yeah? And so you cannot force the people at the county that are following guidance to deviate from the guidance unless that guidance changes. And I think that should be the policy office, like looking forward to what sort of procedures need to be changed and what sort of infrastructure needs to be created to make sure that that resolution is actually good. And I'm sorry, I'm just like very opinionated.
No. Appreciate the perspective feedback, particularly with your newer commissioner, which is always nice, fresh eyes and ears, right? So yes, I think the AIR is actively working to review and revise the green buildings and policy, which is one of the elements that's part of the larger site plan process. So, and two, we have transportation. There's big chunks of the greenhouse gas.
But if, like said, the project decides not to apply for the incentive because it's voluntary, you have a stick here that we should be using, yeah? You have a carrot that is voluntary, you have a stick.
Well, you don't have that much.
It's not quite, it's not quite that. So I will say, and it might be good to have a deeper conversation about the, some of the functionality around site planning, but what I will say is that it is an important policy that we need to continue to share and educate our members of the public, particularly the business community, about the importance of it. And I also think that there will be opportunities as part of the climate action plan to double down and to sort of and reflect that larger commitment through the policies that we establish. But of course, Virginia being a Dillon state, we can only do what the state permits us to do. And so there are certain types of sticks we cannot use that, like, say, Maryland would be able to do. Right?
That's a huge thing, Lily. We can talk about it offline. There's so much in what you said, Jennifer, that I know we could talk for the rest of this meeting. Not just in this, but in your whole thing. I see questions all the way around the room. 8:15, and going all the way around and circling back. It's 8:15. We have 4 things. We have a quorum. We have 4 things that, without you, good planning, everybody. But we have 4 things we have to adopt. And I'm wondering if people can hold their questions, we can adopt those things and then circle back. Jen, not to put you on the spot, but were you planning to stay till the bitter end?
That's fine. Yep.
I'm just worried that we won't adopt some things that are time sensitive, and I'm worried that we won't adopt them so much. And we will be seeing you again, but hopefully we'll get back. So with that, no, really, there's no fact that everybody had their hand up. That let's go to the Shirlington letter. I know Melissa sent a note, just sent this letter around today, and she sent a note that she was going to be able to be here. And she also sent Joan and me the checklist right before the meeting, but I didn't even have a chance to open it. But I have to send it to you. So she gave this, when we last met last month, she was concerned because the project that had so few answers. She'd asked a lot of questions. She hadn't got a lot of information. And so their score was like a 56 or something, which was like the worst score we've done in a long time. And yet they were saying they were going to do all these wonderful things. So she's redone the checklist. I haven't seen it, but the score is up to 65. But she doesn't want, I get her point. The letter says this could be a great project, but they have not committed to anything. So I'm not giving them the point. I don't know if people had a chance to look at it, but we can skim through it quickly. She starts out saying, we commend for a lot of things. The applicant has not yet made key decisions on electrification. I mean, that matters. They've got an extra month since we last spoke. And they're saying that maybe they'll do green building, but they haven't said how they would get the points. And just generally, and the conversation we had last month, if we get into the SPRC project process too early or too late, it's actually both. But in this case, so you see a lot in this letter about the methods and extent of what they're going to do is unspecified. So let's keep scrolling. It's almost, I think this letter's almost done. And electrifying is something we really, really want to see. EV is something we really, really want to see. Critical opportunity to demonstrate climate leadership. This is not a big project. It's a smaller project. It's an infill project, isn't it, Joan?
I think so. I can't remember the details.
Yeah, it's a relatively small project, more housing being built in an existing apartment complex. But anyway, the conclusion is we want the county board to make them keep going and keep planning and keep doing things. But we think we have to weigh in now. They've sort of been unclear about the planning. It was on the planning, it seemed like it was on the planning commission agenda. Now it's not clear whether it is. We may be able to bring this back, but we were concerned that we wouldn't be able to weigh in at all. Trevor, do you have your hand up? Or you just?
I'm sorry, Cindy?
Trevor, we can't hear you.
But maybe you're.
Yep.
I was just going to ask a quick question about the electrical vehicle section. I mean, are we recommending 50% for all of the projects going forward? I mean, is that the?
We say 10% for meets, 50% for exceeds. So we recommend everybody exceeds, so yes.
Okay, thank you.
ready for installation later.
50% ready.
Yeah, more of a general question here, about, and I think it was the third paragraph up there where we talk about, we're not sure it's gonna meet the green building incentive policy, and then we put stuff later on the letter that, like the 50%, which I'm not sure is part of the green building incentive policy. So should we be leaving it up to the county staff to determine whether or not it meets the green building incentive policy and not? Because now this may imply that you have to do all of these things to meet GBIP, and these are things that we really want to see and recommend, but they may go beyond what GBIP is, right?
And at this point, I think it's unclear whether they're even participating in the green building incentive policy, other than committing to, I think, lead 4.0, 4.0 gold, I think is, but yeah. I'm surprised it's 65 with all the red. Somehow that, yeah, I mean, somehow the scoring doesn't sound quite right.
So how about I propose this in the interest of time, that we move to adopt the letter subject to final review by Joan, me, and Melissa to see if if the scoring is working correctly in the checklist, for one. And to clarify, to Rob's point, to clarify that we're not insisting that they do GBIP, but we have our checklist, we have our things. We can take another look at this because it was just today. And again, if it's fallen off the planning commission's agenda, then we'll have more time. You remember this, we pulled it last month, and it's so unpredictable, as given the fact that Joe and I just got invited to the River House thing tonight, like a few days ago, which was, I wrote and said, hey, C2E2 meeting, could you at least move sustainability off this agenda to the next one? To which they replied, no. Anyway, so what do you guys think about proceeding in that way?
I'm just kind of, is that we commend the applicant for,
She thinks they're gonna do all these really good
Yeah.
things, but
the thing is that frankly, if you're talking, because the last time I was in front of the board, which was at the last county board meeting on a project, it was like, I actually said to the board members is like, look, you got to be aware that LEED 4.0 goal, 4.0 is an old standard. 4.1's been around and 5.0 is coming zero. So we should be expecting buildings, if they're going at 4.0, they should be platinum.
the usual
and
checklist says whether it's 4.0. This one doesn't.
I suspect it's 4. I don't know that I've seen any project that's gone at 4.1. I mean, they go for whatever's the easiest, and it's 4.1.
4.0.
4.0, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah. So anyway, it's, so again, maybe I would tone down that language of, that.
Commending them.
The applicant is seeking and plans to. And the other was on the housing thing. I'm not sure. In that lead, in terms of all the commending, again, we're not against the infill of projects and things like that, but it kind of, if you're leading saying that just sounds like a good project, and then all of a sudden we're coming back. As I said, I haven't had a chance to go through the checklist, but with all that read, I'm surprised it comes up at 65.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. Should we be commending things that are meets? Right? Because I mean, in essence, we're pushing for exceeds on these projects, right? I mean, so like, are we? Sorry, go ahead.
And what I keep hearing from Melissa is they're saying all the right things, but they're just, when you push them, they don't commit.
Well, that's if they're not committing, we can't give them.
Right.
I mean, that's
why she wants to commend them and say, maybe this is gonna be better, but it's not
I
better.
know, yeah, I think I think you go the other way around. It's like, this could be a good project, but it's not up to, they haven't committed to anything that really would push them beyond the mark.
So I think that the suggestion you made is appropriate, that you take a closer look at it, review the letter as well, make adjustments, but.
I'll bring Joan to keep me honest.
Joan and Melissa, the three of them.
I mean, honestly, in the last, Clarendon one, it was a pretty good project and it had a score of 75, which for us is a pretty good score.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a good project, but it really could be a great project. And here's what's actually in their plans that could make it a good project. So, you know, it's kind of how you're phrasing it to really kind of, and this one, you know, if we're not even sure they're gonna even quite meet two. And the electrification is, and especially, this is the one I think they were gonna use gas, some of the units for cooking.
They're all blending in my head.
I know.
So Katie, may I take that as a motion?
Yes, that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, but I just wanted to just take a look at the GVIP language too, and we'll look
Yes.
at
Great.
first language, not consistent.
Right. Okay. Okay, the next one, you'll remember that we've been working on our SPRC checklist, which is part of why we're all wanting to hold these projects to higher standards, because they need to be held to higher standards, and we're about to start holding them to higher standards. Although I do want to point out that I know we've only had 13 people, although Joe, now we have 15. So up to full strength, but we had 10 SPRCs and 13. But I think that was like a giant bulge going through the snake that's been swallowing. Because when I look behind those 10, there are none in the preliminary. There's 0 in the thing. So
Projects in the pipeline.
in the pipeline. So when we get through these 10, and some of them are behind us, and some of every month we need to get through more. I don't know, but then River House just popped up, so you never know.
It keeps popping up.
Yeah, it pops up and then it dies. Yeah, so anyway, so we've got Shirlington House. So you remember that we were starting on we're updating our checklist. We're going to put a stricter checklist, but we're only using it for for projects that haven't had their first SPRC meeting, which I think is none of these 10. Even River House is now at 3. They've had 3 out of 2, and they're having 2 more. So yeah, they're having 5. Lot.
They're gonna have separate ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a project. But anyway, so this is the proposed letter to the county board, which goes through why we're making these changes, talks about the climate action resolution, gas inventory, lists, and if you can scroll down, we list the principal changes we made, that we're not tying it to the Green Building Incentive Program, that we're using 4.1 instead of 4.0 to Joan's point, it's above the 5.0. Weighted electrification more heavily, gone from just saying it's okay to be ready to you have to be electric. Even if you want to meet, not exceed. So that's a huge change. We've changed our weighting so that everything makes a difference. It talks about the environmental justice category being a bonus category. Added waste diversion. Then the transition plan. I know we talked last time, that while it might be ideal to do the transition by doing both checklists and showing the differences in scoring, there was a certain amount of pushback about it is so hard to do one checklist and get that information that doing 2 is. So we won't promise, but if there are opportunity to do that, I'll take advantage of it. And as I said, we're grandfathering in the ones that are already in the SPRC process. They've already had an SPRC meeting. Things that I wanted to, so transition was one thing. We had talked about, there's one thing in paragraph 1, go back, the number in paragraph 1, the GVIP paragraph, where I said, must meet C2E2 can add greater value to the board by setting the standards buildings must meet in order for the county to achieve its goals. Then by redoing staff's work and ensuring developers are meeting the requirements at the GVIP level they chose, if any. Meaning staff are already telling GVIP, so we don't have to do that. It was suggested that was too harsh, so I had it highlighted. So if you want to take it out, that is fine. I did take out the part about, we all know, I had a line in there, it was also viewed as harsh, that GVIP everybody knows GBIP is not doing enough, and that's why staff has put forward a new version, because we recognize it, it is recognized that for today's world, the current GBIP does not do. I took that out. So the question is sort of the end part about cut it off as must meet in order for the county to achieve its goals. We can stop there and not talk about whether it's beneficial to us to.
This is why we're changing it.
It's just, no, why we're changing it isn't paragraph above. This is why we're not tying it to GBIP.
Yeah, I would put a period and stop there.
Okay, done. All right, and then, so you can take that out. And then scroll down to the paragraph in brackets, which is after transition. So we had talked last month about whether the county's staff really has the tools to make these building site conditions and ensure that it's actually followed up on. And so that isn't really the point of this letter, but there we could add a paragraph like that's in brackets like this. Jenna did send around some information after last month about how the county does try to put in site plan conditions.
From Jason.
From Jason, yeah.
How do they check? How do they?
And they do have an escrow requirement that they don't get the money back until they've hit certain milestones. But again, that's meeting what they've committed to, which is lower than what we're saying they should be doing in order to be the goal for carbon neutrality.
So I don't know if yeah, thank you. So here's the note.
I think it's a necessary statement. I don't know if you need that last consequences comment, but it's a little strong. I mean, but I could go either way.
It's a valid concern that we have.
So obviously these commitments only matter if they happen, period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last but not least, I just have the planning commission copied on this letter to the county board, which I think is the most efficient way to do it. But if anyone thinks the planning commission will be, if they didn't get their own letter, we can do a very similar letter.
I'm sure we're supposed to write letters to.
But I think it should be CC the planning commission. We always go to them and
Yeah,
they see the checklist too, so they should.
Do you want to give them a heads up or a draft? What actually send it in? Is that your intent?
to,
Share a draft of this letter to the planning commission? Send it in.
no, I was gonna send it to them. Testify before them, just as
Information.
those were the issues I saw. I did get a few comments in advance of the meeting, which we've talked about, or which I've already accepted. Are there any other comments on this letter or thoughts about?
Yeah. Well, I had concern about the whole transition process.
Yes,
Because,
did.
and also the fact that, if we're telling we're changing them and it's gonna make a difference, and we're not actually showing them what the difference is gonna look like, I think it's gonna leave them pretty puzzled. And actually, I've kind of suggested two things that we might want to, is one, I'm willing to go back and look at a couple of projects and score them, on the new checklist, and we can compare them with what the existing checklist looks like. But the other thing is, I think it would be helpful to get at least a handful of us to evaluate the same projects and then compare notes, because that will tell us whether or not we're really being clear on how the checklist works, or whether it's kind of vague. One of the problems we've run into is that, for those that were around when they first did the checklist, we all had an idea of kind of what it meant. But then when you actually had to read the language and try to interpret it, and then seeing it through the eyes of commissioners that were new and hadn't done that is, it's that one on, being electrification ready. Basically, I think if they weren't electrified, we said that they didn't meet that because we were assuming if they weren't planning to be electrified, they didn't have a pathway there. But, that's a little bit subjective, and it's pretty irrelevant when we're really getting at, they really need to electrify.
Yeah.
I would
So I understand the surface level of like being able to show why it would change. I just, if I was a commissioner, or if I was like on the board or something and you came to me, like, it would be, we're showing, obviously the score would get worse. I mean, that would be the point, right? Is that the building score would get worse, but we're not going to them and showing, here's the greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the building and how it would change if it was scored to a higher standard. We're just going saying we made some new rules up, and of course now it scores worse. Like, how would that advise them in any way than just stating the obvious of it's scoring worse? It's scoring worse in an arbitrary number we made up.
Or the appearance of an arbitrary number, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, well, wait, these people got to do it this way. Now all of a sudden you're holding us to different standards.
Like, if
We're
you
not
showed me-
holding anybody any standards, so that's, gotta remember what our role is, advise the county board, but, I mean, it is a communications tool, first and foremost.
I was gonna say, if you had like a greenhouse gas emissions inventory of showing that a higher standard, like when they do publish new building standards, to show how it actually changes in the real world, I think it kind of makes sense, but just showing how the score would get worse, they would be reading it and say, well, duh, if it didn't get worse, why would you even send us a new standard?
But again, in some cases, it may not change that much because of the weighting condition
So
again.
I hear Joan, you offering to rescore a couple of projects you've already scored to show the difference, which would be amazing. I think that'd be very helpful. And I hear you saying that multiples of us should score the same project under the new checklist to see how subjective and objective it is. I think that's gonna be hard, but I think as we start using it, I'm sure we'll find with the new checklist that I know I was one of those new commissioners who's like, well, what does it mean that it's got good biophilia? What is that? You know, but and I'm sure we're gonna see the same things. I'm sure we're gonna want to tweak it, and I'm sure when the new GBIP comes out, we're gonna want to tweak it again. But we didn't want to wait for that, and I think that was a good call. Doug?
Is this letter clear and explicit? I apologize for not reading. Clear and explicit about when the new checklist will go into effect?
It's what it says is that it won't go into effect with any current SPRC, and that in each letter for at least 6 months where it is in effect, we will include a paragraph saying, just as a reminder, this is the new checklist and the scoring is different.
It's a 6-month phase in.
It's not a phase, and I mean, we're gonna start using the new checklist.
Right.
We will, 6 months, we will remind people. We could do it for longer. And we may have to if there are no SPRCs after this group of 10.
And then just in terms of public notice to the developers, I hope that our new checklist will go on the C2E2 county webpage.
Yeah.
So that it's like, yep, there it is. It's in public. It's on our webpage. We review these. Everybody knows we review these. This is the checklist we use. And not like buried in something where you have to dig around.
Right, not just as an attachment to
Really
the letter. but it's there.
Prominent, the webpage.
I think that's fair.
Maybe a banner.
Right? Okay, 50% of the money.
So I'm a little confused. So if we're going, so we adopt this, proceed, whatever, start implementing this, and then Joan goes back and starts scoring ones in the past. Who and what are we communicating to the scoring difference after we've already implemented this? Like, what if Joan finds
No,
out
this
it's
is
very
just-
wrong?
No, this is just really to the county board is, okay, this is how we would have scored this is what this project earned. This was the score we gave them under the existing checklist. Here's what it would be under our new checklist.
So are you just doing that here in this letter, or are we gonna send a follow-up?
I was thinking that we would get this letter out, and then this would be something that Joan or we as a commission could share. I think we want to see what it looks like.
I thought that was more internal.
Well, I think it should be internal first. I mean, we need to run through this thing, but then we also need to communicate that to the board in terms of, what to kind of expect. Because I mean, at this point, I don't think we know, how different the scores will actually look and how that changes from project to project.
It's not every.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, does it matter that much? Right? I mean, we've thought pretty long and hard about this, and if people are comfortable with the principles within it, does it matter? I mean, does it matter? It could result in the prior scoring was worse, right? Versus this one not being more appropriate.
I think,
Right.
I think we're gonna, I mean, the idea is to say is we think this is much more accurate reflection, but based on, you know, what we know of existing practices.
Yeah, but I mean, do we need to compare it to the old ones to say that? Right? I mean, we've all developed these principles that we think are the right way to measure these projects under, current lead standards and everything else.
I would just say as a new member of the commission, it would be good to see a comparison within this group, one or two comparisons to see what the differences are. So we all appreciate, and then I think it's worth asking us, can you give us an example of how this would differ, on the same project?
I mean, every project's going to have different differences, right? So like, depending upon what the inputs were from the old projects, you're going to end up with a whole host of different differences, and you're going to get caught up in trying to explain the differences as opposed to supporting the principles of the new one.
Kevin,
Just worrying about the legal implications of this. In one area, I'm not even slightly worried because the whole purpose of the SPRC process is we're trying to get approval, do something that's not allowed in the zoning ordinance that would be at the SPRC in the first place. So I think there really is more of an opportunity for stick here than the county actually uses. And we should be thinking about that. But having said that, we will get arguments about why are you giving us this lower score when you have all these other examples of prior buildings that you gave a better score to, and we're going to be creating the evidence for them with these scoring sheets by comparing.
I'm not sure we're gonna get much of that. The developers have.
I agree.
Wait.
Blow this off, but if they ever got
But they've been blowing us off anyway. Again, they're not our audience here.
if it ever becomes.
I mean, it allows us to have some kind of discussion of, we're trying to evaluate this. Here's more information we'd really like to get from you.
and I do think we're being clear that we are changing it and we're making it a higher standard because we think that's what's needed to meet the county's own goals. But I hear you, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, Laura, I think it's a good idea to do this comparison because, put yourself in the county board member seat. They're going to be saying, okay, it used to be, we thought 72 was a pretty low score, but we saw a lot of these buildings coming through, and 72 was actually kind of middle of the road and actually not a terrible project. We just had really high standards. Now if they get a score in that's 62, are they gonna be like, well, these are higher standards. Is that good as compared to what a 72 project was before, right? And it could be differences in there. What they might have had better biophilia, but we weighted electrification more, and they have good electrification, and so it could go up and down. But if you do 2 or 3 of these projects and you look at the differences here, you get kind of a general feel for what a decent score is. That kind of gives you just some baseline, because right now all they have is they're used to the existing sheet and they don't know whether or not whatever score we come up here, how it compares to the old sheet.
Right. I think once we start using it, they'll see 2 or 3 projects and they'll get that same gut feel. But so how about this? If people are comfortable with the letter, we go with it. Joan does her amazing work and brings back this information, and we talk about it and see where we are and what we want to do with it.
I have a technical question. The River House being always the exemption right now. So they're doing the SPRC right now with 2 buildings and townhomes, then the full site plan, and then they're gonna do phase in different site plan reviews later of different buildings. So are we going to use the current one for this current SPRC and then?
We're gonna, River House has 3 SPRCs, so they're gonna.
Okay. So
Fair question. For anybody who doesn't know, River House, a big project in South Arlington, it's 1,800 units, and they're infilling 1,800 more units, which is going to make it very dense. But that's 1,800 units. That's one of the biggest projects around. Yeah. Say goodbye to the park. So I think we have a motion on the floor. Had a lot of discussion.
A second.
Sure.
Second.
May even have had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so thank you for that. So Joan, you are next. we've got 15 minutes left. Let's take a minute and just adopt the meeting minutes. I went through them. I think, Joan, you weren't at the meeting, but I think you. Which
Yeah,
is helpful.
I didn't review too much because
Right.
I did note that I was there in spirit, but I actually wasn't. So.
Right, because just like Joe, you were at an SPO.
Yeah.
Very important.
Joan is just a stable name that I keep in there.
So, I put comments in. Does anybody have any more comments, questions, or just don't care? Okay. I have a motion to approve the minutes, and thank you, Jenna, for getting them out.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, Joan, you have the last two topics, and then I think the chance of asking Jennifer a lot more questions, we might just have to bring Jennifer back. But the Alexandria retreat and the transportation plan are two things that are of interest and Doug also went to the retreat department. So I will leave it to you to decide. Start with the letter, which we need to get approved. There's a lot of substance far beyond just the vision and goal.
Yeah, and I kind of made a strategic decision and certainly welcome any input on that is, basically we're at the stage where the county board probably in July will be expected to approve the vision and goals for the updated master transportation plan. So these, of course, are really high level, very general types of statements that guides it. But again, they are important because they help frame what the follow-on policies and strategies will be that are really the meat of the plan. So, in some ways, the vision and goals are good, especially as it went through the kind of public engagement, after from the first version to the second version, in terms of stressing that the real goal is to reduce vehicle miles traveled, is to get and to allow people to truly have options to allow them so that they don't have to rely on their car if they don't want to. And they kind of characterize what that kind of system and infrastructure would look like, being safe and comfortable, convenient, equitable, accessible, and those issues. So from that, it's pretty good. It really describes what we want. What it really doesn't quite address, except somewhat a little bit bigger and more tangentially, is the issue of transportation plan really actually has to be the climate action plan for transportation and really getting down to the meat. So, acknowledging that this is part of reducing the county's greenhouse gas emissions. And it does talk about sustainability in the vision, but sustainability is a really broad term and kind of and then and under the sustainable goal, which is one of the 6 or so goals that they have, they do, talk about, and that's where they reference, moving with less traffic. And then they also talk about, climate protection, adaptation, and resilience, which again, somewhat vague. We can all infer what that means, but, other people might have different definitions. And again, really nice. It would be nice if they talk more about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and cleaner air and the things that actually you can take words and actually attack measures to it. So I've got that in there, but not a big push. I suppose we can live with it. But what I want it to do mostly is focusing on going to the next stage and making clear a lot of the issues. And thanks to Liliana for actually adding some headings and that on that makes it a little more readable. But so again, so then there we kind of focus in more heavily in terms of developing electrical infrastructure and other ways of kind of reducing carbon emissions through what we do with our transportation network. And then looking at some broader policies, some of which we've brought up before, like microtransit. Hopefully in the next month or so, we might actually get a briefing on the pilot they're planning and other things that they really should be considering. and, using empirically based studies for how to actually design traffic that actually is safer for people and not so car focused that, it puts everybody else in danger. So anyway, that's kind of the overall approach. So,
About the vision, last couple of meetings, we pushed back on them. And I think, as John says, we can live with them, but a lot of this new detail that does go to the next stage is new to this, and it's also, I think, very helpful.
Yeah. And again, a lot of it was actually caught when we give our first, these are our priorities for the transportation plan. And that, again, and one of the others for people to be aware of is there has been a real disconnect between decarbonization efforts and transportation. So, and particularly on the electrification, and in fact, in some cases, it goes as far as electrification is a diversion. We shouldn't even be focusing on it. And we shouldn't be trying to electrify the ART buses or supporting, because we just want to get people out in the car and riding public transportation, regardless of what it is, because, it will be better. And that just isn't kind of, in reality, there will be vehicles moving around, so they should be zero emissions. And some people will always have a reason for having a car, or just make it they're just, too stubborn to try something new.
Any questions or comments?
I have one question on their goals. Eliminate transportation deaths and serious injuries. That is a pretty aggressive goal to eliminate.
Yeah.
Where they say working to eliminate on the equitable. So, I think it's going to be maybe hard to reach or be significantly reduce. I mean, it's kind of.
There's a reason for that language, just to come in, Kevin, you know this too. It's very intentional because reduce makes it sound like you're still okay with an acceptable number of deaths and serious injuries. So the
That's
goal
what
is
you have to
vision zero, the goal is to eliminate, recognizing it's a practical matter. It's almost impossible to do, but to suggest that any level of deaths or serious injuries is kind of acceptable. Yeah. That's the policy reason.
Yeah, and again, they've expanded that safe from not just being no deaths, which obviously you want it to be really safe, but you also want it to feel safe. Because there are some sidewalks that's like, yes, probably safe, but I'm walking right against Langston Boulevard, and it doesn't necessarily feel safe or comfortable. So, but they've kind of captured some of that as this needs to be a pleasant way to travel if you're not in your car. But yeah.
Other comments, questions? Are we ready to move to approve this letter? I think we can view Joan as making the motion. Is there a second? Or any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So I'd love to get 2 minutes on the Energy Committee and 3 minutes on the retreat. Elizabeth, can you give us 2 minutes or even 90 seconds?
Sure thing. We had a couple of great speakers at our meeting last week, including Ivy Main, who gave us a rundown of the Virginia legislative session. Wish it was better news, but one bright spot is the governor did end up signing the bill that requires Dominion to propose a virtual power plant pilot program, a VPPP, by December. So we're going to be hearing from a Dominion representative at our next meeting. We also heard from Peter Muhoro, who is Chief Strategy Officer at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, just south of here, doing some very cool and interesting things to accommodate new data center load and just deliver cool energy solutions for customers, including a subsidiary called Vividly Brighter, which helps customers with lots of energy solutions like installing solar panels and smart thermostats and things like that. So we are continuing on our tear of having interesting speakers talk about cool things going on in the energy space. Next month, we're currently seeking a speaker from Dominion to talk about their plans for that VPP. So I'll stop there since we're short on time.
Thank you. Sounds great. Okay, Joan and Doug, the Alexandria Environmental Policy Commission retreat, which is the Alexandria group that's similar to this group, except they take the whole summer off.
That's what they do a 1 day Saturday that they, get everybody together and the public's invited, where they just kind of do a step back, and much of the focus was, they had their chief climate policy officers, Jen's counterpart, Ryan Reed, spending a lot of time talking about his priorities and what he's doing and progress on implementing their existing programs. Actually, there seems to be an awful lot of overlap because I think Jen and Ryan are talking to each other a good bit about, looking towards outreach and engaging organizations and individuals to be the messengers, kind of climate ambassadors. They've got, Ed actually mentioned earlier, the plug in Alexandria is working with multifamilies to put in EV charging. And then the program they're calling Champs. And I really didn't get much details on that other than it's really structured towards focusing on the affordable or multifamily housing and kind of working that. One thing Ryan stressed and what he's really doing, and again, Jen's talking with him a lot, is actually talking to the SCC and also thinking legislatively, is essentially getting Dominion to follow the law with regard to its efficiency requirements, and also to give jurisdictions much more actually authority and oversight over that efforts, because they actually know their residents much more than Dominion would. And so that they're working that through the channels at the state level to kind of get that. One of the things that he talked about, they have actually kind of two. Well, one is an energy and climate action plan, and then they have an older environmental action plan. And, the environmental action plan has got a checklist that actually kind of looks a lot like with the roadmap. It's this big spreadsheet that says all the tasks that they're doing. And he was mentioning that, yeah, if we fulfill all these tasks and get them done, it doesn't say anything about the impact, and we actually don't achieve the goals. And by the way, there's a disconnect between their energy and climate action plan and this earlier plan. And the later plan has fairly aggressive targets, which he admitted that we're not going to achieve, but we'll die trying. So anyway, his general approach is, we're not going to really pay attention to the spreadsheet, but instead we're going to really prioritize and figure out what really is going to have the most impact, and be very focused and prioritized on some key areas, and really focused on metrics and measuring. And he also mentions, they haven't done the deep dive on the greenhouse gas inventory with the sense of, we'll take what the COG has, we know it's outdated, but what really counts is what progress we're making on cutting greenhouse gas emissions rather than having a great baseline number to start with. So I think that was kind of an interesting approach of, let's just not ignore some of these things and get on with the work.
Yeah, so the thing that caught my eye was, Alexandria has a 13-member city council. They have a mayor and a vice mayor. And the vice mayor was there and 2 city council members. And they were talking about something that had evidently happened at the end of their budget cycle. One of the city council members had submitted a motion to take money from climate. It was unspent money, which the real story was, it was some government grant and they weren't sure it was going to come through. So they didn't spend the money, and was going to transfer a bunch of money from climate to housing. And the motion eventually failed, but the vice mayor was still pissed about it and really was not happy at all, and was kind of chewing out the council members. And it was just, from somebody from the outside, it was really entertaining. So, I guess we should say that we're pretty lucky because our county board is smaller. The 5 members have been pretty well united, like the climate resolution that you mentioned earlier. And we haven't so far had any public disputes about climate issues. Now, maybe that's good. Maybe we need to have some public disputes about climate issues.
Not that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you both for going. And of course, this raises the question, is that something we would like to do, have a retreat? I think we could have spent 6 hours, that was like 9 to 3. It was like a 6-hour retreat. We could based on the questions and hands I saw about talking to Jennifer, we could have had 6 hours right there. So, but we will bring Jennifer back. Thank you for your forbearance, and thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Jennifer, for speaking. And I don't think we have to decide today if we want to have a retreat. I'll bring back the work plan and our report on the Energy meeting next month, which will probably be just as busy, but those are two that can fall off without tragedy. So anything else that we should, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of meetings, and it may slow down over the summer a little bit, but I don't know. Houses and slowing down. They've already scheduled the June and July meetings. So anyway, other questions, thoughts?
So just another tidbit is that they're getting ready to do a major renovation at City Hall. And they're gonna put geothermal in the parking garage. And we get projects where they fight whether or not they have enough outdoor space to put geothermal in. So again, they're making this a demonstration project of how much they can go in terms of making this a sustainable building. And, you know, we've spent years trying to get the county to make sure they don't build buildings with, and buildings with gas in it, and electrify the ones that are using gas.
It's Alexandria.
Yeah, but again, they're gonna put it in the parking garage. And you can do that, but you know, it's out of the mentality of what the county thinks in terms of where geothermal should go.
Well,
Cindy, if it's all right, I would love to accompany someone on one of the SPRC. Probably this is something I should have done after the meeting, but I'd love to go on one of the SPRC.
Under the rubber house.
Yeah. It's a lot of yelling.
yeah.
Could be fun.
Hey. All right, I think we're adjourned. Is there anything else? I thank you, everybody online for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.
Good night.